When it comes to violin strings, there are so many variables and questions, and it can actually get pretty confusing pretty quickly. So in this video, I'm going to try to simplify all of that down and give you the information you need to make the best decision when purchasing strings for your violin. I'm Laura, full-time RVer, violin teacher, and creator of Meadowlark Violin Studio, your tribe for learning violin. Now, the first question beginner violinists usually have is, when do I change my strings? Now, this depends on a couple of different variables. If you're brand new to the violin and you just bought a violin, I would say that you probably don't have to worry about changing your strings that first year of playing, unless your strings are already really worn out, or maybe they were cheap strings and they don't sound that great to begin with, or if you're just playing a lot, as in several hours every week, then you may want to change them sooner than that first year. But then in general, as you start playing more, I would say change your strings once a year, and that can be every 6 to 10 months, depending on how much you're playing and what type of strings you have. Some strings will start to lose their brilliance and their resonance much sooner than others, but all strings will eventually start to decline in quality. And it's not like there's an expiration date. It depends on how much you're playing and the type of strings that you currently have on there. And it's also usually a gradual decline in quality. For me, my sign to alert myself that I need to change strings is when I'm just not enjoying playing anymore. If the violin sounds dull, or if I'm getting really frustrated really easily, if I'm thinking, gosh, I just don't sound that good, then I know I need to take a moment, think about when the last time I changed my strings, and change my strings. And then everything gets better and I love playing the violin again. There are a couple of options when it comes to purchasing strings. First off, you usually purchase your strings as a set, which means you purchase the G, D, A, and E strings all together. Next, you want to make sure that you select the right size. If you have a 4/4 or full-size violin, you want to make sure you're buying a full-size or 4/4 size set of strings. The next option you'll see is ball end or loop end E. The E strings can attach to your violin in two different ways. So look at your violin where the strings attach to the tailpiece. If the E string has a loop secured around a hook on the tailpiece, then you will need a loop end E. And if there's a ball on the end of your E string, you'll need a ball end E. Some string brands won't have an option for loop or ball end, and that's because they have a removable ball end on the E string, which works for both ball end and loop end options. Sometimes you'll also have the option to choose the string gauge or tension, and you'll see options like light, medium, and heavy, and that's describing the string gauge, which is the string thickness. Now, sometimes the words gauge and tension are used together because the gauge also affects the tension. So violin string tension is the force that is necessary to stretch the string to a desired pitch. I think of it as how taut you have to pull that string to get it to a desired pitch. So not all string suppliers offer this option, and if you don't see this option when ordering strings, you're probably getting the medium gauge tension, which is standard, and that's usually what I recommend for your first string change. If you do want to experiment with gauge, here are some things to consider. Heavy gauge means a thicker string and a higher tension. It's a higher tension because it requires more force to stretch that string to the desired pitch. That means more resistance to the bow, and it may also mean a slower response time with the bow. Now, heavy gauge offers a lot of projection and power, and if you feel like your current strings are maybe shrill, then you may want to try a heavier gauge or a higher tension. Now, light gauge strings are thinner and have a lower tension. So if you want maybe a better bowing response, or if you want the strings to feel softer under your fingers, light gauge could work for you. Now, if you feel like higher tension strings choke your sound and make your sound dull, you may want to try light gauge or lower tension strings. But again, if you're just starting off, if you're brand new to changing strings, just go with medium tension. That's a great place to start out. Now let's talk about what types of strings to choose when you're changing your strings. Now, this is a very personal choice, and it depends on your particular violin, and it depends on your tonal preferences. Different strings can bring out different tonal qualities for your violin. There are three main types of material that string cores are made out of: gut, steel, and synthetic. Gut is warmer, but it requires more frequent tuning, and it's not going to last as long as other string types, and it's a lot more expensive. So I don't recommend choosing gut strings at least for your first couple of times changing strings. Steel core strings are often brighter and cheaper, but they sometimes lack that tonal complexity. So I don't necessarily recommend these either for you for your first couple experiments with different types of strings. And then we have synthetic core strings, which use different materials for that core, like a type of nylon, for instance. Now, this is what I recommend for most people, and the majority of your popular string brands are going to be synthetic core strings. Now, you may have more options when it comes to the E strings, because even if you are purchasing a synthetic core set of strings, the standard E string is probably a plain steel E. Now, sometimes you have the option to upgrade to a gold or a platinum plated E. These are usually warmer E strings, but they wear out quicker, and they're more prone to whistling, and they're also more expensive. You can also get wound E strings. These are also not as shrill as those plain steel E strings, but they aren't as responsive. So for the first time purchasing strings, just getting the standard set with the standard steel E is a great place to start. You can always experiment a lot more once you get more comfortable with changing your strings. Now, there are so many different string brands out there that bring out so many different tonal qualities, but if it's your first time changing strings, I recommend going with a middle of the road type of string, something like dominants. Dominants are an industry standard. They were the first synthetic strings out there on the market, but you can try lots of different string sets to bring out those desirable qualities of your violin, or maybe to dampen some undesirable qualities. So if your violin sounds dark and you want to brighten it up a bit, then you might want to try some strings like Eva Perazzi greens. Or if your violin is pretty bright and you want to bring out its darker tonal qualities, then something like obligatos might complement your violin. Now, those are just a few examples. If you want more specific examples of what strings might work with your violin, then check out the link below to my article on choosing violin strings. Now, it's also worth bringing up the concept of string tension, because some brands are higher tension strings than other brands. So remember those heavy, medium, and light tensions. They're not industry standards. They vary depending on the brand. So one string's medium tension is not necessarily the same as another string's medium tension. For instance, a medium gauge dominant string is 46.7 pounds, an obligato medium string is 49.2 pounds, and an Eva Perazzi medium string is 51 pounds. Now, this is important because for some violins, those higher tension strings are perfect, but for other violins, the high tension might choke the sound. So this is one reason why it's good to start out with lower tension, so something like dominants, and then each time you change strings, you can experiment and go up from there. Now, when you buy a violin from a trusted luthier or a good violin shop, they usually are pretty good at matching that violin to a certain set of strings, because they want that violin to sound its best. So if your violin came with higher tension strings on it, it's probably okay to stay with those higher tension strings unless you just want to try something lower. And I've got links below so you can compare tension across different string brands. You may be wondering, can you mix and match strings on your violin? Yes, you can. You can try different gauges, you can try different brands, or a different E string than the other strings. It's actually fairly common for people to experiment a lot with their E strings. So you might have, for instance, Evas on your G, D, and A strings, and then have a different brand for the E string for the different tonal qualities that that E string brings out. But again, if you're new to strings, keep it simple for the first time and start off with just one set. Now, this is a lot of information, I know, so don't get overwhelmed. If it's your first time buying strings, keep it simple. Just match the size, choose loop end or ball end E, choose medium tension, and then go with a brand like Dominance, which is a great middle of the road type of string, and it's a great place to start out. If this was helpful for you, please remember to like and subscribe. That really helps me out. And let me know in the comments below what strings you love and if you have any other questions about purchasing strings. I'm Laura from Meadowlark Violin. Happy practicing.